Nigel, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ben. It's a pleasure to be here.
When I was reading your bio, I was like, wow, you've moved from naval engineering in the corporate world to the world of buyers agents.
Yeah, it's a huge change, but it's been a very exciting journey. And my father was always in property. He had quite a diverse career, but he was always had property behind the scenes, and so maybe I've taken a bit out of his book. But yeah, it's a great journey. I'm 50 now. I've been working, I guess, for 30 years now, and I firmly believe that the buyer's agent is where I belong for this latter part of my career. It's exciting.
Well, mate, you look great for 50. Firstly, so the,
Thank you
the
very
corporate the
much.
corporate the corporate grind didn't grind you that bad.
No.
Um, you said the word change, so I mean, I came from a corporate background, not as long as you, obviously, like nowhere near as long as you, and I could only imagine like the change management of 30 years corporate. Um,
Yes.
like going from employee to business owner. I think I was like 3.5 years, and it was like, and I was younger than you.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is like, was that a very daunting decision for you?
It wasn't. It wasn't. It wasn't because it for 20 years before I was a buyer's agent, I worked for a software company and I was one of their first employees. So I helped build the company as well. So I sort of had a lot of background marketing, sales, and whilst I wasn't you know, looking after the financials of the business I was in, I had a lot of experience in building a business. So I was comfortable from that perspective. But but on the flip side, you go from having an exec management team on a good salary, secure, and I had a great boss. It was a great company. It had great growth forecasts. To go from having that secure salary to not. So that was a little bit daunting. But I think change is great. I think learning new things is great. Part of the reason why I did change is because I was a bit stale and I could do my old job in my sleep, really. So this provided with a new challenge, and I was always, both my wife and I are really interested in property. In fact, my company, which is Neva, the NI is Nigel, and the VA is Vanessa, my wife. So on our third date, we
Nice.
were spreadsheeting properties and forecasts, and it sounds a bit nerdish, but it's true. Um, yeah, so I think change is a really good thing, and I know a lot of people struggle. I have some friends that are stuck in a job they're not that happy with and can't make that change, and I get that. But if you can embrace change and roll with it and learn along the way, I think that's an amazing thing.
I was in Sydney the other day getting interviewed for something, and we are talking around, you know, I guess mixing things up, and I said, in terms of addiction, right? There's something that is more addictive, in my opinion, than, let's say, sugar or heroin or a monthly salary. And I said comfort.
Yes.
I said comfort. It seduces you around like a false reality. And I think what you were just sharing is interesting. You said you could do your job with your eyes closed, and I think that's gets to a level of complacency where, um, I guess you can just sit there doing it, right?
Yeah.
But you're not stimulated, and you're not really operating at that higher calling that you could be, utilizing. So I'm really stoked to see that you, especially at your age, you just made the move, and you obviously have a lot of skill set. Seems like you got a lot of different knowledge base. So um, good on you for making the move.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, the BAI course was great. I was recommended that from one of your students who's a buyer's agent and has been for a long time. And that set me up really well and gave me a lot of confidence as well. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, the comfort, yeah, I did. You become unstimulated, and you sort of get to a point where I felt like I was probably letting my teammates down a bit. And don't get me wrong, the change and especially early days, getting the buyer's agent business going was hard at times. A lot of dark days, but you've got to get through those, and it's great to have a good support network around. And my wife's been a great support. The BAI group has
Yep.
been great. So yeah, it's good to have a support network around you to get through, because everyone will have tough times. But yeah,
Yeah.
I've got through it and I've sort of come out, and I'm really excited for 2024. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like you hear about this whole concept of product market fit, right? Like,
Yeah.
but I think of it like founder market fit. Like you've got to try and,
Yes.
as a founder, like find that niche that you actually are going to be passionate about working in. You're going to feel stimulated, and it seems like you've landed there.
Yes, I absolutely have. Yeah, and I you're right. And in my old job, yeah, it was selling a product, software product, and marketing it. And
Okay.
it was all about product market fit. It was finding that niche for who was the best for that product. And you're right, it's exactly the same here. It's founder market fit. And of course, so yeah, you need to be that right sort of person to be able to do this, I think. But of course, then we might talk about that soon. There's the niche, my niche service offering to the market. Like it's finding that niche. Then there's a few.
Mm.
So I've still got, I guess, a service market fit to consider as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good point. So, Vanessa, your wife, so is she actively involved in Neva?
She's not. No, she has a job.
Okay.
And look, we maybe in a few years we and don't get me wrong, she's very helpful. Like I talk to her every day about situations I'm in, and get advice. So she's very, very good. It's like I guess it's like being a buyer's agent. You know, you remove one of the things, as you know, is you remove the customer from the emotion. It's great to have a sounding board to talk through things, because they're
Mm.
separated from it, and so they can have that outside view. So she's great from that perspective. But yeah, she's not. She has her own job, yeah, and some kids. We look
Yeah.
after a couple of young kids too.
Well, her name's on the company, so I'm sure gonna have to join at some stage.
Yeah, I hope
There's
so.
a bit of pressure.
Yeah, that's right. And she'd be
Nice.
great. She'd
So,
be great to
yeah,
have.
and you're obviously an investor. Like you mentioned that from what I understand, the buyer's agent that you used obviously recommended you to BAI, but you've built your own portfolio
Yes.
with Neva. Like, what does the ideal client look like for you?
Yeah. So when I started Neva, I was 100% focused on investors,
Okay.
and that's up until really a couple of weeks ago. That's been what I've been doing, and so the people I bought for have been investors and small scale developers, or I guess they're probably more serious investors that ultimately want to develop a property. So yeah, acquired a few small scale development sites for those investors. Um, but along the way, I have helped a couple of owner occupiers last year, and so literally as of the past few weeks, I'm also now um, providing a service to owner occupiers and first home buyers as well, but with a focus on. I'm based in Newcastle, as you know, so I focus on Newcastle and Lake Macquarie only. So I'm
Great.
focusing here, and and it's taken me, talking about niche, it's taken me that 18 months, 2 years to work that out. That I think that's a good niche for me and a good fit for me, and that's where I can offer the best, not just for me, of course. That's I think where I can offer the best value to my clients is by focusing on that local area.
Did you enjoy going through that process with those clients for the owner rock? Like, do you enjoy owner rock?
I I do, yes. I enjoy them all. They're both, as you know, different. Like as a buyer, the big thing for me as a buyer's agent to help answer that question is, compared to the corporate world, is in the corporate world, yes, I was helping corporates, and by helping corporates, you're also helping people within the corporates.
Mm.
But as a buyer's agent, you're helping people directly, and I think that is hugely valuable. And you and such a worthwhile thing to do. Obviously, as you know, property is a huge investment and a big part of people's lives, whether it's an investment or an owner occ. But of course, for an owner occ, and the few I have helped, they've been first home buyers actually. That's such a massive step in their life and such an exciting part of their life. And to help them through that is very rewarding. So yeah, I've really enjoyed the owner occ side, and I'm looking forward to doing more of them. Yeah,
Yeah, nice. Yeah, interesting. I just thought I'd ask because I mean, you seem quite, I don't know, seems like you've worn different hats with your respective roles previously, but it seems like you might be a bit more left brain. So I kind of just maybe assume that you'd be doing more investment, just more, a bit more analytical.
Yes.
But actually, let me take a few steps back. So you mentioned around the concentration of where you're focusing, right? In terms of areas, geography, you mentioned you wanted to keep it quite, which I find really interesting because I coach a guy who is in Sydney in the east, and he's like a specialist in like two suburbs, which is Paddington and Woollahra,
Right. Yep.
as a buyer's agent. And I really haven't seen a buyer's agent yet who like niches into like two postcodes.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
And he's dominating hard. And it's like usually it works really well, as you would know, for a real estate agent, right? Like they can just, focus on postcodes because there's vendors and they can canvas. But
Yes.
buyer's agents, as you know, it's not so easy. So I like the idea how you are concentrating in areas, because I think that from what I've observed, and this is an observation, it may be inaccurate, but a lot of buyer's agents just focus, they spread themselves quite far geographically, generally. So I just wanted to acknowledge because I think the fact that you've decided to concentrate in some areas, like really concentrate there, I think takes a disciplined approach. And
Yes.
I just want to talk about that.
Yeah.
Like what was the main reason behind that?
Well, it's interesting that when I actually started an investor focus, and I had on my website, and I made a choice that I had on my website to also offer buying in Southeast Queensland. And years back when we used a buyer's agent, we bought in Southeast Queensland. And
Okay.
being that analytical brain, I guess, when we used a buyer's agent, we did a lot of research on Southeast Queensland. And I did a few trips up there to inspect sites and things like that. It's not that we didn't trust the buyer's agent, because we did.
Yeah.
It's just the way my wife and I work. We wanted to be sure, and because I enjoyed it. So I was offering that service, but I guess as I did the job, got into the job and did it more, I realised to really do it and to do it well, I have to look at those properties, and servicing interstate without another person in your team, or subcontracting the inspections, which I just didn't feel comfortable with. Any property I recommend to a client, I want to inspect it myself, and travelling to Queensland it just became impractical. So that's part of the reason why I also wanted to focus. And I think being that more focused, you can offer a higher level of service, I believe, because you're more specialised. So I think it's a win-win for everyone. It's a win-win, win for the client because they get a better service level because you're not spreading yourself too wide, and you're doing the right. I'm a firm believer of doing the right thing by people in life. It's just the way I've always been, and it's no different in business. For clients, it's one of the most important things. So that was what led me to that decision to specialise. Yeah.
That's interesting. I want to get your thoughts on this. So, excuse me. When I was a con handler, so we very rarely bought a property where a client didn't inspect it. Like the only time I think I ever bought a property for a client that didn't inspect it was maybe they're an expat. I mean, I can't recall, but they would have been an expat and they couldn't get into town.
Yeah. Okay.
But like I can't even recall if I ever bought a property for a client that didn't inspect it.
Yeah.
And obviously me inspecting it as well. So all of us inspecting. So obviously as the buyer's agent industry is developing, especially like this let's say sub 1 million regional buying national investment model, a lot of buyer's agents are buying in different states and they are not inspecting the properties. What are your thoughts on that approach? Because as you know, just let me just preface by saying, so like obviously some of them have team members on the floor, some of them are outsourcing. Like what's your just feedback around that?
Yeah, for me personally, it doesn't sit comfortably with me, and that's why I chose not to do it. That's just how I feel. I think it can work though, as long as the person who's doing the inspection for you is a very trusted person. I think a team member would be ideal rather than subcontracting to a property manager, for example. If it was a member of your team, if you had a company and you had 10 buyers agents and they're spread out and they could inspect on your behalf, or it may not be on your behalf, if you might be the buyer's agent representing the client. It just happens you are in the region. I think that is okay in my honest opinion. But subcontracting it out, I'm personally not that comfortable with myself. I know it happens a lot, and it may be less of a. Obviously, it's a bit less important for an investor. It doesn't really work for own occupiers. It's buying sight unseen. I don't think that's right. But for investors, it's a bit less important because you're not living in it, for example. So I get it. I understand why people do it, but yeah, I'm not overly comfortable with it.
Okay. Yeah, good. I mean, everyone's got perspective and input, and
I guess that technology, of course, videos and ability to do reports quickly and provide them. And the amount of data that's available these days, that makes it easier and better, I think. So that's certainly very helpful. But yeah, it wouldn't, unless it was a team member of mine, I wouldn't be comfortable.
Well, it's interesting, right? Like someone like me that I inspected every property for my client, just the way I was a buyer's agent. Like I've engaged a buyer's agent now. We're looking to buy an investment in Bondi, and that they've found a property, and I kind of looked on Google Maps. I know the street. I kind of went through floor plan. I was like kind of like to my wife, I was like, hey, like I don't need to inspect this. Like unless you want to inspect it, like let's just get going on it.
Yep.
And so she's going to go next week to Sydney to look at it. But it's interesting. Like I would have 5 years ago would never have thought about buying sight unseen. Like, and so when you said the word technology and just the like that, you're right. Like FaceTime, they do all that. Now they walk through with you. You get your DD done. So it's interesting. Like I would have been prepared if Rachel wasn't willing to go there to buy it sight unseen.
Yeah. Okay.
So
but
just
the interesting thing you mentioned, you know the street, like lived in Sydney.
That's true.
Different. I think if you know the suburb and the street's really important, as you know. That helps a lot. So that's
good point.
Yeah, I think
that's a good observation.
But obviously with Google Maps and everything, it helps, and it's crazy. It's crazy what's out there to help you these days.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
So,
but I'll just sorry on that. Like the one we bought in Queensland years back, that I went and inspected. There's a few sites, for example, like in a flood zone, that's very easy to rule out remotely. But then this one came up, and okay, it's in a new infill subdivision, so we go and check it out. And Google Maps didn't really show this, but there's a big 7-foot retaining wall, battle axe block behind the site, and I saw that, and I just went, no, not too comfortable. Don't need the potential issues in the future of that retaining wall, something happening with it. That's just one example of what it can be. That was just a block of land. Having someone inspect is very powerful, I believe.
Yeah, it's a valid point, and I think that the due diligence that needs to be done, like a thorough due diligence, especially if you're not inspecting, to make sure you're basically checking off any box on that checklist that could cause an issue.
Yes, absolutely.
Whether it's like DA close by or just anything that could obstruct, anything that could just cause issues. I think as long as you've got a thorough process, well, I think you need to have a thorough process if you're not inspecting. Yeah. Like you basically can't have risk.
Exactly.
So you need to have a very tight process. So how is the market in Newcastle? Because I know that the media, like if you're an outside buyer at the moment, I mean, we're doing this, obviously, this recording in March, but I mean, if you're an outside buyer looking in, you kind of think the world's somewhat ending, and that obviously rates are higher than they were 2 years ago. Yeah. But, I think that people, have some form of expectation that the market's very soft and that, it's not great. How is the market in Newcastle at the moment?
Yeah, look, I mean, overall, I'd say it's fairly reasonably balanced. Like stock levels are still quite low across the board in Newcastle, and there's a few pockets, where it's sort of 20 odd days, and there's a few in the unit bracket in particular, New Lambton units, even up towards Cessnock units are sort of quite popular because you can get great units around, the classic old brick style in Lambton, solidly built, well built, sort of you still get great units there, 500 grand. They might need a little bit of work, but New Lambton's a fantastic suburb, quite central to Newcastle. And the entertainment centre, minutes away from the hospital. So there's little pockets which are doing quite well and quite popular. But overall stock is quite low. Newcastle, it's based on CoreLogic data. I think its prices are still going up, about 0.4% in the last quarter and about just under 5% over the past 12 months from CoreLogic. So it's still chugging away slowly in terms of the prices. As always, there's still the odd suburb record, in the past few months. And there's still a fair few top-end homes that haven't sold, though. Like I went to an auction for property on John Braden. I live in Merewether, John Braden, Merewether, which is right opposite the beach, just a couple of weeks ago, 9 mil sort of mark. And a lot of people, not one bid. And there's a few boutique homes around that have been sitting there for quite some time, which I guess is, those sorts of numbers are nothing compared to Sydney, but obviously there's a lot less people up here to spend that sort of cash. But it still remains a popular, it's still very popular for Sydney-siders, especially, of course you've got, people think of Newcastle, you think of Newcastle, but there's Lake Macquarie as well. And when I say Newcastle, I mean Newcastle, Lake Macquarie myself. But and Lake Macquarie, as you might recall, over the past couple of years, it's got quite a few accolades as it's the most popular place for Sydney-siders to go to buy a house if you're coming out of Sydney. You can get around that western and southern edge of Lake Macquarie, house on the water, private jetty, that sort of thing for a couple of mil, for a Sydney-sider. You're an hour down the freeway. So it's been quite popular for Sydney-siders in that respect. That around Newcastle, you've got Maitland, which is powering along as a little city, over 90,000 people. And the latest forecasts are over. The sort of area needs roughly just over 100,000 dwellings in the next 13 years, and to meet demand, and they're sort of behind that. But Newcastle itself's really changed. I'm 50. I've lived here for over 30 years in my life, and it's changed a lot. And really diversifying in terms of the economy, which is really important, as you know. It's the old. I'm not sure if you've been here recently, but the CBD has moved from Newcastle East to Newcastle West. Huge amounts of infrastructure, development and apartments and hotels. A couple of years ago we had 0 5-star hotels. We now have 3. Well, the last one being built. So there's a lot happening in Newcastle, and a lot of big technology scene. Health, of course, is big. Defence, just at Williamtown up the road, is getting bigger all the time. The Newcastle International Airport being developed, and a couple of $100 million being pumped into that from government. So there's a lot happening here, and I think nice. But for me, I know this is getting a bit off topic. Sorry. I've lived in I grew up in Newcastle, but I've lived up in Whitsundays for a while. I've lived in Jervis Bay. I've spent a fair bit of time in Sydney too. Living in Sydney, and Newcastle's a great balance for me of lifestyle and employment opportunities and amenities. It's not too busy yet, which is good. But you've got that amazing lifestyle. You've got the beaches, which are very similar to Sydney beaches, just a lot less people. You've got Lake Macquarie, Australia's biggest coastal saltwater lake, which is just a water playground. And of course, you've got Port Stephens and Hunter Valley. So there's a lot, from a lifestyle perspective, there's a huge amount going in Newcastle. And I think that's what attracts, a big thing that attracts people to the area.
I love it. I love it. Nigel, last question before we wrap up. How is business for you? Obviously, how long have you been running for now?
It'll be 2 years in May, so nearly 2 years. And I guess to begin with, it was a little bit part-time just to get things going. But so about 2 years. And business...
Okay, nice.
I had a really busy end. Beginning of last year was a bit quiet. End of last year was busy.
Yep.
And I've got quite a few clients the end of last year. Wrapped up the last one early Jan, the purchase
Okay.
in Hampton. I've got three clients I'm working with at the moment, and that's actually investors. So some of those,
Okay.
I'm sure you understand, but some do the buyer's agent thing, but a few of them, there's the investment strategy first before you
Yes.
go, okay, let's buy property. So they're doing a bit of that. But yeah, getting quite a few inquiries. The inquiries have picked up just in the past 2 weeks actually, which is good. So I think there's a bit of more confidence in the market coming through. Yeah.
And when you say more confidence, do you think that's because people now feel confident that rates are going to be going down, not up?
I believe so, yes. I think that's a big thing, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And just a question. So the clients that you're currently working with, like you talked about developing a strategy, like are you doing like portfolio style of planning for, like, if a client comes to you, an investor, and let's just say they don't have a property, or maybe they've got one and they're looking to diversify,
Yes.
whatever I guess, are you sitting there typically at the beginning and helping develop a strategy with most of your investor clients?
I am, yes. Well, some of them that want that, some just want an investment property, and whilst I talk about strategy, it's always their call, of course. I just say thanks, but I just want to get one. That's great. But
I'm surprised I don't want it. I'd be like, yeah, please.
Yeah. But some. Yeah, I do that at the start with some. And also one of my recent clients, we did a fair bit of strategy work originally. And then I've just done the purchase from the Newcastle, but I've put them in contact with a colleague of mine in Newcastle who's commercial sort of suited them and their life and next step. And it's something they're really interested in. So yeah, they're doing some work with a colleague of mine that does commercial. And that's actually up in Brisbane at the moment. So yeah, I do strategy at the start, and so it's not just about racing off and buying property. So that's just an extra service I offer. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, Nigel, thank you, and wishing you, Neva, all the best.
You,
and
Ben.
It's great to hear just what you're doing and how you've transitioned and where you're focusing on in terms of, geographically. I think it's great, and I think with your background with buying property, as an investor, and I just think with your just knowledge base you've cultivated over your 30-year corporate career, I think there's a lot you can inject and pass on as value to your clients. Well done.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you for all your support and support of BAI. It's great.
You're welcome. Thanks, Nigel.
Okay, bye.